I kind of noticed because I'm a little tired today. I noticed I sound a little bit like the folks on NPR. Should we read this as an NPR story?
Sure.
If Larry doesn't know what that means, I'll do it. All right. Democrat-controlled House votes to transform D.C. into a state, violating the Constitution. Larry doesn't understand. She doesn't know what the hell I'm doing.
Mr. Reagan.
Now, spring is here, and what do we do in spring? Spring cleaning. The mower needs to be sorted, the garden looks a little bit wrecked, and the barbecue needs some work. You might enjoy doing these jobs, but if you don't, or you can't, you're going to need to pay somebody else, and that takes a bit of money. And let's face it, putting money aside for comfortable retirement is the only way that you're going to get out of doing the lawn yourself, right? And if you got a little bit of money saved up in the bank, well, that way you can visit the kids, you can hike the trail, you can play golf, all the things that your friends are doing. And Noble Gold can help with this by investing in precious metals along with your other investments. A gold or silver IRA is a great way of doing this. And this month, Noble Gold is gifting a genuine rare Carson City minted Morgan silver dollar with every qualifying IRA or 401k that you invest with. And this thing is fantastic. I mean, even just the case, I love this thing. See, because I actually really love old coins and stuff like that. And it's absolutely beautiful. I looked it up, and these things are a nice little chunk of change, and it's genuinely old. I mean, apparently these things were distributed in the 70s. They were obviously minted in the 19th century. In 1964, after a century in obscurity in the vaults, so these were in like the vaults, and so in the 1960s, they were like, okay, let's go ahead and distribute these. And I think the initial offering was like $15, and all these collectors bought them up. But yeah, now that you can get one in this nifty case, I mean, this thing, it's beautiful. It really is sort of like an old-fashioned thing that you can have, and it reminds you of better days in America when everybody wasn't so woke and crazy. People say that, oh, if you're nostalgic for the old times, you're nostalgic for oppression. No. If you're nostalgic for the old times, you're nostalgic for a time in America where people respected things like morality and ethics and not like wokeness and horrible things like that. But when people they actually had a sense of integrity. And I think people long for those days. All right, so if you want one of these Carson City coins and you want to invest in an IRA or a 401k, get in touch with the experts at noblegoldinvestments.com or call 877-646-5347 and talk to the experts now. That's 877-646-5347, or you can go to the website noblegoldinvestments.com or click the link in the description below. Yeah, NPR is like a leftist, publicly funded radio station. Mm-hmm. And they all of the people on that network, on the radio station, they all talk like that. They all sort of whisper into the microphone. It's really weird. I used to listen to it all the time because it was a good way to get an idea of how the left thinks, but the left has gone completely crazy. That was back in like 2008, 2009 or something like that. Maybe a little bit later than that, but yeah, I used to listen to NPR all the time. All right, Democrat-controlled House votes to transform D.C. into a state violating the Constitution. The House voted to transform Washington, D.C. into a state Thursday on the pure party line vote of 216 to 208. Before the vote, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California, as we know, argued in favor of the bill describing Washington, D.C. residents as being denied their right to fully participate in their democracy. Pelosi also said Washington, D.C. pays more federal taxes per capita than any other state. Its budget is larger than 12 states. Its population is larger than 2 states. Its people have been fighting for voting rights for 220 years. That's not true. With a full 86% voting for statehood. The speaker saluted Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton for her leadership in bringing this historic legislation to the floor. Norton then said of this legislation, Congress has a moral obligation and constitutional authority to pass H.R. 51. They all talk the same. All leftists talk the same. They all talk like this. Republican opposition to D.C. statehood was not so complimentary of Mrs. Norton's socialist utopia. Representative James Cromer, Republican from Kentucky, spoke opposing the legislation. You want to hear what Republicans sound like? I'll do a voice for Republicans. Ready? Let's be clear. Let's be clear. What H.R. 51 is all about, he began. It's about Democrats adding 2 new progressive U.S. senators to push a radical agenda championed by the Squad to reshape America into the socialist utopia they dream about.
H.R. 51 is not really about voting representation. It's about Democrats consolidating their power in Washington. Representative Jody Hice, Republican of Georgia, voiced his opposition. There's a guy named Jody? Why do guys from the South often have female names? It's weird. Voiced his opposition to the idea that Washington, D.C. has no representation, calling it absolutely false. It does have a local representation. It also has a delegate right here in the House of Representatives. It has electoral votes for the presidential election. Seems like something no other city in this country has. H.R. 51 flies in the face of what our founders intended. The framers never wanted the seat of our government to be a state, and they specifically framed the Constitution to say so, he concluded. One thing that I've often said about this, which, I get the argument that there's a lot of people in Washington, D.C., and they don't have the same Senate rights as the rest of us. They don't have representation in the Senate. I get that. I get that people might not like that, right? So every single person in D.C. who cannot live without a senator, they do have an option, and that option is move out of Washington, D.C. There's no border around Washington, D.C. keeping them in. They can leave. They're choosing to live in Washington, D.C. for whatever reason. Somebody made a really good suggestion, which is if you live in Washington, D.C., you don't pay certain taxes, right? Certain federal taxes. You're exempt of certain federal taxes. And that would be a good incentive to live in D.C. And it would, in fact, improve Washington, D.C. because a lot of people would move there to save on taxes, and it would become sort of a thriving place. And you might end up pushing out all the poor people because, all these rich people want to save money might move in, and all the rent might increase and everything might become more expensive and more of an elite place. But it would certainly, provide an answer to this issue that they keep bringing up of it's not fair. They don't have a senator. It's like, okay, they don't have a senator representing them. Like big deal. They can move. But yeah, I mean, there's other solutions other than just make them a state, considering that it's constitutionally inappropriate. And we'll go ahead and look into that here in the second part of this article. Jim Jordan took the totality of the Democrats' radical agenda to task. So he just went off on them. He says, Democrats started last week with one of their members saying we should get rid of the police altogether. They ended last week with another one of their members being admonished by the trial judge in Minneapolis for saying ridiculous things, he pointed out. And what did Democrats do in between, he asked? They passed this bill out of committee, which gives 2 new Democrat senators to the District of Columbia. And less than 24 hours after that bill passed in committee, they introduced legislation to pack the Supreme Court. Because I'm not a representative or I'm not a senator, I don't know how all this stuff works exactly. In 3 months, the Democrats have been in control of the federal government. They've created a crisis on the southern border. They continue to push to defund the police now so that they can continue their radical policies, he reminded the House floor. Think about what else they passed out of this body. Representative Andy Biggs, Republican Arizona, argued that no state has been admitted by the Constitution, but no state was created from a territory which was crafted in the Constitution. The legislation will now proceed to the Senate, where Senator Mark Kelly, Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, and Angus King have all said that they are a doubtful no vote. I think that means they are a no vote. They presume that they would vote no on it. The Biden administration, however, declared its support of D.C. statehood Tuesday, contrasting previous Democrat administrations' legal determinations of unconstitutionality. The White House Office of Management and Budget issued a statement of administration policy on H.R. 51, writing, establishing the state of Washington, Douglas Commonwealth, as the 51st state will make our union stronger and more just. Of course it will. But legal scholars and 2 Democrat administrations have objected to D.C. statehood's viability without a constitutional amendment to the 23rd Amendment. The Office of Legal Counsel in 2007 believed it was unconstitutional. The Justice Department under President Ronald Reagan and also Jimmy Carter stated the transformation was unconstitutional, and so did the Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia when he sat on the D.C. District Court of Appeals, Breitbart News reported. And that's from Breitbart. Anyway, so yeah, if you don't want to live without a senator, don't live in Washington, D.C. And maybe we should deal with their concerns about that. But certainly making it a state is an inappropriate thing to do, considering that it's unconstitutional. But, you know, these Democrats don't care about such minor, trivial things. They'll just do whatever they want because they want more. I mean, what this comes down to is the Democrats think if they make it a state, they're going to have more power in Washington, D.C. They're going to have it's going to be less likely that any Republican president will ever get elected again, right? All the stuff they're doing right now is to try to make sure that Republicans never get elected again, and they keep Democrats. I know that you're not an American. You know, you didn't grow up here. So the question of what do you have to say about this story, I think I know the answer to, but let me ask it anyway. Valeria, what do you think about this story?
Nothing.
Oh, shocking.
Why did you do this to me?
I don't know. I like to make you look stupid. Uh-oh. The little octopus got... Oh, that wasn't even close. That was a terrible throw. I can't even reach that. Oh, no. It's chapstick. You crazy woman. Okay, shall we end the show with domestic violence? I think that was quite fun.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that's it. You want to say goodbye?
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening.